Designed from the ground up, the D'Addario Backline Gear Transport Pack is the ultimate solution for players on the move. With more than 8 specialized storage and transport compartments built right in, it makes getting everything to the gig painless and intuitive.
And then let's talk about your pedal board maybe.
Okay.
And the combinations that you're using some of these pedals in. I know you have been using Fractal Audio's Axe-Fx for a number of years now, and you've now switched back to amps and pedals. Maybe talk a little bit about the reasoning behind that and, you know, your philosophy there.
Yeah, I mean, Axe-Fx, you know, is an amazing piece of equipment, and for us it's really saved us a lot, you know, a lot of heartache. Certainly if you're flying to India or to different places where, you know, you're not going to be able to hire the kind of equipment that you want. So Axe-Fx definitely serves its purpose. But with the lockdown and this whole COVID thing, we've had a chance to go back to pedals and amps, and I hate to say it, for us it just simply suits our music a lot more. And I had to dust out all the old pedals and maybe get 1 or 2 extra new ones as well. Just so, because the Axe-Fx is like a Swiss Army knife. It can literally do just about anything you can imagine. But I do think the pedals sound more unique, and I do think it's a better tone overall. And it's obviously, you know, it's impossible to replicate some of these pedals. They're unique. So I'll kind of walk you through some of the pedals that we have, and we'll probably start.
Maybe follow your signal chain. So where
Okay.
you're coming in first, or
it's not the way it appears, but I'll do my best. Okay, so here we've got the Empress buffer plus. Again, just preserves the sound quality with the buffer. I have it on the send and return, so it all starts here and ends here, goes out to the amp. First thing I put in is a compressor. Yeah, I mean, I use it maybe on a couple of clean guitar or maybe sustain lead, that kind of stuff.
and is that to take the peaks out of like a clean signal from your guitar, or is it set really lightly, or how is it kind of set?
Yeah, I set it light enough if I'm doing that. If I wanted to sustain it, I'll just bring up the input a little bit more, take the output back, you know, and I could maybe bring up the 10 to 1 if I really wanted to sustain. So
the ratio there, that's a ratio switch.
Ratio.
Okay.
So I have a 2 to 1 for most of it.
So pretty light.
Pretty light, yeah. I don't want to crush it too much unless I want that kind of tone. Just a Digitech whammy, pitch shifter, using 1 or 2 of the new sounds, and on Seance Room as well, where we pitch the lead up or whatever. Yeah, it's an interesting effect. I have it set to chords, but you can go to classic either. Both work for what I need it for. Then we go to this board. This is Chase Bliss Brothers. I just love this pedal. It's literally just like I use it as kind of a gain boost. Just perfect when I want to say do arpeggio guitars, and I just wanted to have a little bit of gain, but I don't really want to hear distortion. It's just the pedal to use. It has a second switch here if I need to have a little bit more of a drive to it. The next one is a company from Italy called Fractal Audio. It's called the Splinter Drive, and has 3 switches here, and I leave it in the middle when I want just normal overdrive, but I do put it on, I think it says H, which is probably like a filter that takes out the bottom end, which is very useful for me when I'm using detuned sounds. For example, if I'm in drop A, I noticed the pedals can't seem to quite handle it, so this takes the bass out and it really cuts through just the way I want it. So I use that quite a bit when I want to, when I'm down to drop A or drop B and I want it to kind of cut through the pedals a bit better. That's very, very important.
That's interesting. So it sort of cleans up the signal on the low end, so it can distort the relevant frequencies more.
Exactly. That's 100% it. That takes us to the next one, which is the Hedgerow pitch shifter. This is an amazing pedal, and I got this a while back. I bought it second hand, and I just fell in love with it. The plan was to get rid of it, but I kept it, and I'm glad I did, because it's become a secret weapon, literally, for the new album. What it basically is a pitch shifter, a 3-way pitch shifter, but also a delay. And I have 4 settings down here, which plugs into the back of this. And
So is that MIDI or is that a part of the pedal?
It's a part of the pedal. It's got like an expression kind of cable.
Okay.
But it's brilliant. You have different settings, like a kind of like a pitch shift or delay, which then feeds into the distortion to create this massive kind of. It's hard to explain. It was like a kind of a pitch shifted delay going into distortion. It just really creates an amazing sustain and sound. Next one is the Particle Red Panda. The new one has 4 presets, which is handy. So I use them for kind of slightly different songs. The second one is kind of like this warble kind of effect that I used on a couple of songs on the Epitaph album, like Media. It's just a lovely sound. But I also have a few other kind of interesting ones where they kind of there's a little bit of delay and a little bit of kind of detuned pitch shifter going on, which is really interesting for again, if you want to kind of have a little bit bend in your lead guitar sounds. So I really like that.
How are you switching between the presets in these pedals, and are you manually doing this?
Yeah, that was a kind of an interesting one. I was thinking, from Axe-Fx you'd hit one button and
yeah,
you're there.
It would select everything in the pedal. So how are you managing that now? And or is it to be determined?
No, to be honest with you, I got used to just changing it all manually, and I kind of thought maybe it's more interesting to see the sounds being built up in front of an audience rather than me just hitting the button and everything just just comes perfect. So I like the idea of kind of just hands-on and just kind of it's kind of part of the art form, I guess. So yeah, I got used to it. I have to say it was very difficult, to get used to it again. But no, I'm just going to keep it that way. I don't want to get back into MIDI and all that stuff. The less of that, the better. Yeah. The next one is this a company from Germany called Red Secret DI. It's an overdrive pedal. I guess, is it like a Klon? I'm not too sure. But it's a very special drive, and it seems to work on certain songs where I can't get anything to work. This one seems to work. Like it's a track that we have called A Deafening Distance, and with every other drive, it just sounds brittle and sharp because of where I'm playing on it's like on a high E string. But with this, it just sounds really nice. So this is a really cool pedal. So if one of these overdrives don't work, this one will definitely work.
And do you think it's a fatter, softer tone? Do you think that's why maybe the more brittle lines that might stick out a bit too much, then it just kind of pulls those frequencies back? Or
yeah, it's definitely got. I don't know if it's fatter. It's just not a shrill. Moving on to the next one is Bad Recovery Effects from the US. This is called Bad Comrade. This pedal, and it's amazing. The thing about this one is it's a fuzz pedal with a kind of a weird delay to it. But to make it work right, you have to turn them all up full first, then plug the power in. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Okay.
So it's kind of a very quirky pedal, and then you dial in what you want. Really interesting for some of the noisier lead parts. If you don't want them to sound too clean and you want them to sound a little bit more unusual, this is the pedal to knock on for sure. The Elements by Dr. Scientist is next. Really like it. Great mid-tone off it. Just a regular distortion pedal, but it sounds fantastic. I really like that pedal, and it sounds amazing when you feed it into some of the other pedals as well, which we'll talk about later. The next one is a Boss Distortion DS1.
That's been in there in your rig, right?
I've had a few of them. This is a kind of a modified version of it. The next one is a Chase Bliss mood pedal. I use that on the new song called Adrift. It's just basically like a delay. The setting that I have, this thing can do so many different things, but I have a delay that kind of warbles, and it feeds then into this next pedal, which is a Friedman Beeo Deluxe. A little bit different than these pedals tonally. It's a little bit more. It's got a little bit more kind of nice fizz end and a little bit more mid tone to it. And this has it's a double pedal, so it can go into distortion as well. Really interesting pedal, very high quality. It's literally you could literally maybe leave those two out and you could get away with that one. But certain tones, certain songs suit these pedals better. But this is a really fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more to anybody if you're looking for something that's a really good heavy rock kind of distortion pedal. That's it right there.
So I'm noticing you got a lot of pitch shifting and warble kind of effects. Do you think that's kind of integral to your sound? Is that something you go for, and why is there so much pitch shifting?
Yeah, I think, you know, for what we're doing, we don't really want to have a too kind of straight rock kind of tones, or kind of, it needs to have a certain amount of breakup for it to work.
Then I'm seeing 4 big muffs here.
Yeah, okay, so this is, so they're not just for show, it definitely works, so this is what we'll talk about now. So we go into this big muff first, which is just your standard Black Russian muff. And it's set with the sustain quite low, so literally that's all it is. But what the reason this works, so let's say I switch that on, and then I switch that on, it just colors it just a little bit, just to kind of get rid of maybe that standard rock tone to something slightly more, I would say, kind of indie or whatever, just a little bit of a different kind of less rocktastic sound. So I use that kind of quite a lot, that combination, just feeding into the big muff, but not too much sustain, and it really works a lot. It works brilliantly. We'll leave out the Metal Zone is next, but we'll just move on to this big muff for a second. So this big muff is for thicker, just as what people would expect it, your typical big muff.
Full tone, fat
sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. It's a bit, you know, it's got a bit, obviously a bit more mid-strip than your distortions, but yeah, I really like that sound. I've always been a fan of kind of the standard big muff tone, and the Russian ones I do think are a little bit more toneful than, say, the newer US silver ones. We'll backtrack to the Metal Zone. I've always used the Metal Zone back in the day. This was like the pedal I'd hit if I wanted to kind of annoy a few people.
Depending on your mood.
Depending on my mood, but I use it still today, again, for maybe some of the more for feedback, or for kind of thickening up some lead tones or something. Again, running it into the big muff, you don't really get too much of the sound of the Metal Zone, but you do get all the power and the sustain off it. If I ran it on its own, I'd say it would be pretty, yeah, I love that tone as well. And this is a Keeley modded version as well, so it's a little bit better than stock. So yeah, it's a great pedal. And that takes us into this pedal, which is Moose Electronics in Ireland. It's basically based on a HM2. He calls it HM23. He's modified it quite a bit, and I think it's just a fantastic sounding pedal. Really, he's fixed. For me, I asked him to make it have a little bit more top end to it, and yeah, it's fantastic. Moose Electronics in Dublin. He makes some amazing pedals. Stuff like Nomad is one of his other pedals that works great with my other amp, the High Watt that I have at home. So yeah, fantastic, really good. And I have that seems to work, funny enough, after the muffs. I don't know why, it just works. Initially I had the HM heavy metal pedal before these, but this one seems to work after it. So you can never tell until you actually try it. That takes us over to the to this pedal here. This is just your standard New York muff. I use this one for a more shriller sound, and certainly for the endings or something where I wanted to kind of have more of a I guess a noisy sound. It's not supposed to be pretty. I definitely would use that, and it really just, especially with all these, say, warble effects feeding into this, it sounds mad. And you can leave all those muffs on, it works right all the way into it. The last one is a
so you might have 3 of them on at one point.
I could, yeah. I generally wouldn't have these two on at the same time. It'd be one or the other. This is a Ram's Head muff from 1974, and just a much better mid tone. These are kind of more mid strip. This has got a lot more mid, and seems to handle bass end better as well. It just cuts through more. So you could, it might be a little bit shrill for lead guitars, but definitely for rhythm, you could just use that nearly all on its own. So after I should say, this pedal, the Big Muff, it does come back to, I think it's the Mobius, into the Big Sky, and to the Big Sky's last, so it's the Boss DD500, then into the Big Sky.
Is this where you get most of your delays from?
Yeah, I leave it at the front because I do use tap control quite a lot to try and get it, and then I have 2 presets per kind of, 1A, 1B. And then you hit those 2 and you're up into different ones, have a reverse delay and a few different ones there. But yeah, it's a really good pedal. Boss, I think I've done themselves with that one. It's a really good pedal. I definitely preferred slightly over the Strymon Timeline. It's just a little bit more versatile. Then we go into the Mobius, I think, and the Mobius is just a great modulation. I don't use too much modulation, but certainly maybe on the earlier stuff like the End of Beginning, From Dusk Beyond comes to mind, where I do
to that
chorus.
Fat chorusy type of sound.
Yeah, and I have a few presets that I've made there, like this flanger and stuff like that. I haven't really used, mostly just chorus at the moment. Maybe
I haven't heard you use flanger.
No,
I don't think.
Maybe,
unless it's very subtle.
Yeah, I haven't used this too often, but I've created a preset just all the same. And then the rotary I would use in tracks like Snowfall, and if we were to play at Sunrise in Aries, so they would use kind of a slightly tremolo-y kind of effects. Reverb's big, really important. We've got a dark hole here, and then a slightly bigger kind of, it's non-linear, but it's more of a bigger sustained kind of reverb. And then this one is it's called Bloom. It's kind of just a much more echoey kind of sound, which is really cool for some of the intro guitars and stuff like that need that big kind of sound. But yeah, that's kind of the pedals all sorted out, I guess.